Stillbirth claims the lives of 6 babies every day in Australia. A new Senate committee has been established to address the issue. The federal government is calling for submissions and research that may help reduce the rate of stillbirths. For more, we're joined now by the CEO of the Stillbirth Foundation, Victoria Bowring, as well as author Maree Imrie. Thank you very much to both of you for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Maree, I'm going to start with you because you're highlighting to us that this story is about much more than statistics. Thank you for sharing your and Xavier's story. Did you have any inkling that there was something amiss with your pregnancy with Xavier?
No, so it was a really healthy pregnancy all the way through up until the 6.5 month mark, and at that point I felt reduced movement and became a little bit concerned, but sort of told myself that he was running out of room in there because he was growing bigger, which I've since found out is a total myth. And so that was really the only indicator at the time, the reduced movement, and that was when I went in to get a checkup to find out what was happening.
Victoria, is that a common story when it comes to stillbirth, that it really does appear to mums to come out of the blue?
Sadly, Kirsten, it's an all too common story. Most of the families that we speak to tell a very similar tale to Maree's, that it is completely unexpected for them.
And after an experience such as this one, is the question that everyone, of course, asks why? And is there an answer yet?
Look, it is. It's the first question. First is, why wasn't I told it was a possibility? And then comes so why has this happened? Now, there's been some research that's undergone into the causes of stillbirth. There's still up to 65% of those 6 stillbirths a day that happen in Australia that are completely unexplained. So baby's healthy, mum's healthy, testing of the placenta, etc., comes back to say there's absolutely nothing wrong. And that's why we need things like the Senate inquiry to encourage further funding so that we can now look at that 65% that isn't known.
Maree, were you ever able to find out any reasons?
So when Xavier was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck a few times, and we were told by the midwives that perhaps that was the cause, that they refer to it as a cord accident, that had occurred in utero, and that's how he had died. We chose not to have a full autopsy done, so we don't know for sure, but we had some testing done, and at the 6-week follow-up they weren't able to confirm that was cause of death, but I guess for us emotionally we took that as the cause of death so we could attach a reason to it just for our peace of mind, I guess.
And so what are you hoping will come from this committee?
Oh, well, I think it's a really wonderful step forward in the right direction, just to be seen and have the opportunity to be heard by the Australian government. And I guess my hope, the end goal, is that money can go into research and then education around reducing the high rate of stillbirth, and hopefully to the point of 0, so families don't have to experience this pain.
Victoria, I understand that there was some research done recently which did identify perhaps the degrading of placenta being a possible cause, and that might eventually lead to a blood test which might actually identify susceptible mothers.
That's correct, Kirsten. There has been a fair bit of placental research of late. There is, I guess, early indications that placental health has a big bearing on the health of the baby, and there is a possibility of placental degradation later on in the pregnancy, so it has a limited lifespan itself. Scientists are working on a biomarker blood test that hopefully they will be able to detect around that 36-week mark whether or not mum is in that high-risk category, and detect a possible vulnerable baby.
And is there what type of work is being done overseas in this area? Because it does seem almost unbelievable that today we still don't know as much as we really should.
You're absolutely right. There is work being done internationally in research, and in Australia here we do keep across what is happening on a global scale. And it's very similar research. Here in Australia, though, we do know that the statistic hasn't changed for decades, and a lot of that clinical research that's been going on, whilst does have important findings. We just need more of it. We need a different type of research, definitely starting to think outside the square and move, towards sort of innovative ways of researching the problem. And hopefully through the inquiry, we'll be able to have recommendations around what that may look like and funding to support it.
And so is that your hope as well, that after this, the federal government will allocate more funds to research?
Definitely, yeah. A larger research funding pool is vital for us to be able to find these answers, but it's also vital that in that is included education. As Anne-Maree said, families need to know what we know so far to date, and also clinicians and health professionals that are looking after these women.
And Anne-Maree, did you find that there was support for you when this happened and in the aftermath?
So I had support from friends and family. I think one of the most important things for me was just people that were really gently and quietly able to sit in that space of intense grief. And then after that sort of intensity dies down a little bit, you've just got the love for your child left. And so you want to be around people that are going to share in that with you and encourage you to do different things to acknowledge and remember your baby. And then also other formal supports were in place that I accessed as well.
And I imagine it must have been quite nerve-wracking thinking about the process of trying for another baby.
Yes, it was. We came to the decision about 4 months after Xavier died, and then it actually took well over 12 months to conceive, which was quite heartbreaking going through that process and at the time. But once I became pregnant, it kind of ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I was at a point where I was much further out from the intense early days of the grief, and so I was able to manage that pregnancy with a bit less anxiety than I anticipated.
Anne-Maree, Imrie, thank you for sharing your and Xavier's story with us. Victoria Bowring, thank you for coming in as well.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kirsten.